Well, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to this webinar with two great people. We are today live both in the webinar, but we are also live on Facebook, and we will be live later on LinkedIn, YouTube, and everywhere. I am so honored. My name is Lars Heistone, and I'm so honored to have two great thinkers with me today who are going to talk about how to balance innovation and continuous business improvement. And you know, the two old friends actually who are in the room today, they went to school together, they played football together, and they've had a lot of common shared history, but also I think a common shared future, because balancing innovation and continuous business improvement is something that is so relevant for every business in the world today. I will just leave the floor to Niels from New Future Formula, who will be introducing both the subject of today, but also introducing us to the thoughts behind the balancing of innovation and continuous business improvement. So Niels, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, and welcome here to this webinar. Thank you, Lars, and a special welcome to Anders Drejer, my dear friend. And we have a compassion for doing improvements on different levels, and we will address that, and doing change on different levels, and we will address that today. And I will start with sharing my screen. Could you help me about doing that, Lars?
It is there is a share screen in the middle, and you should be able to just share screen.
Yes, shared screen.
Yep.
Correct. And then I cannot find my. Just a moment. Sorry.
No, it's okay. We're ready. We're waiting for you. While Niels is finding his topic, I just want to welcome everybody who is live on Facebook as well to this great talk of thinkers on how to balance innovation and continuous business improvement. So Niels, your screen is shared and we're ready to go.
Here we are with Anders Drejer and myself. And I will give a short overview about CBI and innovation. It will be 2-3 minutes, and based on that, then we will have the chance to listen to Anders on innovation, and I will give a short talk about CBI, and thereby we will be ready to have a dialogue on these two fields. So first, a short introduction. This is our work, so to say. It's a little bit gray, perhaps, and unclear what are we doing when people are asking us. We know all these jobs. Some have a more easy job, saying I building houses or create windows or whatever. But and that is for sure very, very important. We have a basic operation where we repeat things, and things Anders and I repeat perhaps is to some extent making presentations, just to give an example. We all have this operation on day-to-day basis, and then we ask ourselves, how can we stay fit? How can we do it a bit smarter, a bit better, a bit simpler? That is CBI. And sometimes we also ask ourselves, hey, let's do something breakthrough. We want to stay relevant in the future. That is innovation. And that is the three basic things we are doing, all of us, in our working life, in our organizations. And we have an example last time from McDonald's, how they worked on this. Of course, they have the operation, as you know, going into a McDonald's and get a burger. And they work continuously on doing things better, smarter, simpler. And we got a lot of examples last time from Jakob Stabell on this, and fascinating to see how they just continue. And all this is built on innovations. And that is a slide you can see in the third part. I will go very fast through. That is, first they invented fast food, then they invented franchise in a modern professional manner, then they invented owning all the real estate around McDonald's, and then they invented a true globalization on a scale and size never seen before in world history. And based on that, they not just do this, they also continue to improve that and thereby give value for the society and earn money for themselves. So that is the subject of today, how to balance these areas and especially CBI and innovation. How to spend your time, how to spend your money as an organization, as a human, as a team. That's a challenge we all see day in and day out. Also, we will address the cross-fertilization among these areas. For example, how, as you can see with the black arrow in the middle, how CBI give ideas for innovations. Sometimes we thought that it was just a simple, small idea, and that opened room for huge changes, huge improvements. That is innovation. And also the other way around, when good people have innovated something, just as we saw on McDonald's, then there are room for making them better, faster, and cheaper, simpler, more healthy, and so on, the next 10, 20, 30, 40 years. And that is the yellow arrow from innovation into CBI in the bottom of this. And all this said, then we are ready for the exciting stuff. That is Anders Drejer, and he will explain about innovation. And a huge pleasure to have you here.
Thank you.
Anders, I have followed you for years, and for all the participants outside of Denmark, then I think I need to give a few more words about Anders.
Yes.
Anders is one of the youngest professors in Danish history on business, organization, innovation, that stuff. He is have a background in Master of Science in Engineering and has built on a lot of MBA stuff through his career. He have written more than 25 books. He have been the most mentioned professor from the academic world for several years. Actually, 1 year, the most mentioned cited person, the man who talked a lot with the newspapers and television. So welcome, Anders.
Thank you.
A pleasure to have you in here today.
Thank you. As you know already, my name is Anders. I'll be talking about this subject, to balance CBI and innovation. My field is innovation. And this is just a brief illustration. This says 100 and this says 40. And as you can see, it's an illustration of the fact, and this is the starting point, that the world throws technology at us at an ever-growing and faster pace. Now I'm going to start this lecture with an outrageous claim by saying that it's not about technology. I will try to explain. Because, while I put this up, where were you in the spring of 2020? In Denmark, the exact date was the 11th of March, when our Prime Minister closed down the Danish society. I'm sure there were days like that wherever you are. I can tell you what I looked like on that day. I put it here. It's Will Smith from the film I Am Legend, strangely about a virus. And this is where he discovers that the zombies now are able to walk in daylight, which he didn't see coming. He actually also invented the virus. That's another story. That's how I looked on the 10th of March in Denmark, because I was on a date in Copenhagen with a young woman, and we had been doing stuff that did not involve television. At some point, we ventured out of the hotel to get some food, and she says to me, "This is like walking in Copenhagen at 5 o'clock in the morning. There were no people, everything was closed." That's when I realized that something big was going to happen, and I called my teenage daughter and got the explanation. But this was interesting, because all of a sudden we had to go online. We had to switch to these media. We had to change the way we communicate and the way we teach. And technology was already there. We could have been doing webinars for 15 years. We could do online teaching for 20 years. The technology was already there. We just didn't want to change our behavior because it's easier to repeat stuff, maybe improve stuff some, than it is to actually change your actual behavior. On the next day, after buying obscene amounts of toilet paper and Coca-Cola, along with 5,000 other people queuing together, probably getting the virus, all of us, I went into my library just for fun, and I found this. It's a book. It's from 1997 by a science fiction writer called The Third Pandemic. Oh, go figure. You knew this was coming. It's not a matter of technology. It's a matter of us changing our behavior. In this model called social change. When we change our behavior, then someone creates a business based on that. That's called innovation. And then at some point, political systems will change. So yes, there will eventually be robots taking care of your grandmother if she survives the virus. And that's where innovation comes in. Now, innovation is different, and that's important, from operation, and it's slightly different. I'll get back to that from CBI. Good example. At some points, but this is, as you can see, in the admission room of a hospital, if a traffic victim comes in, slightly bleeding from the ears, probably has huge wounds in the chest because of the steering wheel hitting him after a traffic accident, several broken, this and that, that's chaos. I will not tell you the story of when I observed in a hospital a person dying, but I did, and as he had cardiac arrest, I observed 25 minutes of absolute chaos. And all the operations of the hospital were shut down because everyone in said hospital rushed to this room to save the patient's life, and no one knew what they were doing. And it was absolute chaos. That's not very productive. And that's a situation you actually need to avoid. And I'll give you an illustration because this could show us what the difference between operations, CBI, is. It's fine. Yeah. There you go. Chaos. Avoid that. This is the model called Genaiven. It's a Celtic word. My good friend Dave Snowden invented that. But it's a nice model to illustrate several things. That day in a hospital in Denmark, I realized that for 15 years, I've been going around wearing black shirts saying we need to only innovate. I missed the balance thing. I said, go treasure chaos. But that's not true. Some of the situations that you encounter as a manager or as a worker are simple. That's what Niels calls operations. It's simply a matter of doing it. You don't have to do analysis or overdo things. It's just a matter of repeating what works. We can call this best practice. And that's a rather simple way of working. Then sometimes things become complicated. You don't know beforehand what's cause and effect. So you might actually have to apply all of the training that Niels and we have the same education. We're masters in industrial engineering. So we know how to analyze stuff, which is important. And that's the border between CBI and operations. You analyze, you establish cause and effect, and then you create a new solution. Solve the problem, so to speak. Then sometimes things are complex. You have to figure out what cause and effect might be. You'll do that by probing, by sensing, by experiments. And then at some point, you can usually reduce complex to complicated. And then you have the situations in the emergency room where everything is chaos. And what you're actually in that situation desperately trying to do, point one, save the patient's life. He has cardiac arrest. There are procedures for that. If that succeeds, in that case, it didn't. But if that succeeds, then you have to say, okay, he has brain injury, he has broken his sternum, he's done this and that. All of this we know how to deal with as long as we know that it's there. So actually, it's the reduction of chaos to complexity that's the basic managerial task. Now, I think this is CBI, and I think this is innovation. And I think very importantly, don't spend all your time there. I'll get back to that. But then I need another one here. And I think I have time. Okay. Case in point, sometimes you need Gaza at the controls. You remember this guy, probably. Wonderful reference for you women, football. But this is Paul Gascoigne, very famous English football player and hellraiser and lots of other things, who, when I lived in London in 1997, was the most famous person in England. During our stay there, the English national team traveled to Italy to win a football match. They qualified for something. Everyone was very, very happy. Now, in that aeroplane trip, Gascoigne, the most famous man, was of course invited to the cockpit of the plane to talk to the pilots. And whilst he was staying there, turbulence happened they encountered turbulence, which you can't really predict. So the plane went up and down and did whatever planes do when there's turbulence. Now this guy, the captain of the national team, Paul the Governor Ince, very famous for his fear of flying, explained to much joy of the journalists, oh no, it's Gaza at the controls. And of course you want to avoid that, but not always, because sometimes you are in chaotic situations where all you can do is react, try and create something new, change the situation. Sometimes you get a Ray Kroc coming along saying there ought to be one of these in every town, and then he invents the franchise system. I once spoke to some of the most arrogant consultants I've ever encountered, and they worked with not McDonald's, but a very famous Danish company who's done also, strangely, 4 innovations in their history. Much of it's to do with owning whatever it is that they did, kind of similar to McDonald's. And what they said to me after listening to my talk, they said, we would not have had, as consultants, the guts to recommend, say, McDonald's to own their own buildings, or to make a franchise model, or to go global. We would not have had the guts. So sometimes you need the crazy man in control. Now, so here's the key message, and then I'm actually done. I have no idea of time because I don't own a watch. I don't want that. So, Niels started by saying there are 3 types of things. I think they're overlapping. That's what I tried to illustrate with the Kniven model, is that CBI and innovation overlaps. Niels calls this cross-fertilization. I'm sure that some of the ideas, or I know by experience, some of the ideas that come from even the, sorry to say, lowliest employee can save companies lots and lots of money, because an idea for an improvement does not know that it's big or small when it comes out of the person's mind or mouth, for that matter. So you need innovation, but there's overlap. On the one hand, innovation is making sense of strange situations, creating new solutions. It's a creative process, whereas CBI is more of an analytical process. But like I said, I think there's overlap. But if you want to put it as a dualism, then sometimes you have to recreate your business model, recreate your solutions, rethink. That's creativity. And as I started by saying, the technology is already there. So it's a matter of combining already existing ideas, thoughts, concepts into something new. That's innovation. And if you want innovation to succeed, you make sure it becomes a successful business. So going back to the CBI the Geneiben model, you need to reduce chaos into something complex, into something complicated, and preferably into something simple, because that's where the money's made, which I think is important. So you need innovation, you need chaos, but you don't want gas at the controls when your plane is landing, or when your plane is taking off, or when it's smooth operations. Sometimes it's just best for the plane to be on autopilot and keep gas far, far away from the cockpit. You just need enough innovation. 15 years ago, we went around saying we should have 90% innovation. If I was Japanese, I'd be standing here with a sword in my hand, walking around my bellows, apologizing, because that's not true. And what I found, and why I choose to spend time with my great old friend here, is we need probably more CBI, because this says, who makes the money to, as Niels would put it if he wants to provoke me, waste on innovation? Well, that's CBI and operations. That's all the other stuff. And then people like me waltz in and spend all the money on great ideas. And sometimes they work. But just remember, someone has to make that money. That's where CBI comes in. So how much innovation do you need? Just to give you a feeling of what it might be, the great Danish pump manufacturer Grundfos, and Niels has worked there. Its founder, Paul Due, the older, now his grandchild is also called Paul, is now CEO. That's a wonderful story. But he said 4% of sales spent on R&D and or innovation in my book, and that will make sure that we are competitive also in 10 years. 4%. It's not 90%. Maybe 4% is not relevant for your industry. Maybe that's 1%. Maybe that's 8%. What do I know? But that's the balance, and you need the right balance. And I think that's my key message here. I represent part of the solution, and also some would say, Niels, part of the problem. But what is important is to have the right balance, so you avoid too much chaos, but you also have just enough chaos, just a little bit of gas at the controls. And these were my words. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Anders. A pleasure to listen to you. And I will give now a little bit about what is CBI, and that can be explained in many manners. And it's for clear that today we have to look at the case that we when we do CBI, then it is in a context with innovation. So let's start asking, why are we doing a CBI, and find that answer in the organization, and set a direction for that in the organization, and based on that, moving forward and repeat. So the first thing we do is setting objective, setting a direction, and very important also understand the why, the purpose. So when you have an objective, know the direction for that, and know why you are doing this, then you are much better in shape. So, and that is the starting point. It is so easy for all of us to just drone in the operation, in the day-to-day business. And what we deliver with CBI is a frame, a room for stepping out of the mouse wheel and get all these smaller and bigger things done. And it can be done in dozens of ways. You can make quality improvement programs, you can make Lean Six Sigma, you can make Kaizen events, you can do a lot of things. But it is needed to have a shared practice about that, around that in the organization. And we have developed our own way of doing that. We call it CBI, Continuous Business Improvement. And depending on the circumstances in the organization, we make an adjustment and adaptation to the given organization. That could be that we focus on a factory. That could be that we focus on a sales unit. It could be the relation between sales unit and the customer. It could be several things. It could be logistic department and so on and so on. But what we strive for is again and again to analyze the situation on an analyzing day. On that day or days, we do more or less the same way. Of course, the content is damn depending on the context, but we map the processes from different angles, and we do that with 15 key employees. And together we, as a step number 2, see a lot of things that we maybe should or could improve, things we should do less of, things we should consider to do more of. So we address efficiency and effectiveness, and we also do different kind of reflections. So we not just pick up some simple things, but also have a longer perspective. And based on the analyzing day, we come up with typically 5 to 15 improvement projects for a given area. A factory, or a part of a factory, or a value chain, or a procurement department, a logistic department, depending on what it is. So based on that, then we are able, in a sprint, as we call it, then in 100 days, we simply support people to realize the improvements, the 5 to 15 improvements. And in the end, what are we getting? We are getting people who move from confusion to clarity about doing improvements. They have a frame, they have a time schedule where they can get the work done. We also change processes from unclear to clear and better, safer, simpler, easier, cheaper, faster, whatever it is, healthier, cleaner. And we also develop our systems. So we can have a system that look like this, and then afterwards we have a system to maintain it. And all this together, when you repeat this again and again, then you achieve 2 things. You develop culture, you change culture. The key to change culture is to change your habit and repeat it and repeat it and repeat it. And therefore the principles given here, defined through this design process in the beginning, is so important. You also get another thing, and that is money. So returning to the Grundfos case, Grundfos have in more than 35 years, every year plus 5% in total improvement, in total productivity across the whole system. And that 5% give the opportunity to invest in great new things, which enable us to address them for the next 5-10 years. And when we have made everything clear and good, then we take up a new innovation. So that is the balance. And of course, the content, the figures, the concepts, everything is different depending on organizations. So I will give a very simple case in the end. It will take me a very few minutes. We have an area. It could be the customer relationship, internal customer, external customer relationship. It could be a department, a factory, a logistic department, whatever. You have an organization with, for example, 50 people. You have perhaps a revenue with, let's say, 10 million euro. You have an EBIT, an example, 0.6 million euro. And what we are doing when we are doing CBI, then on a half-year basis, first we identify the potentials. That is at least 20%, always. And people quite often don't believe us, but yeah, So it is simply, I can promise, 2 million in potentials, and then as through the process I mentioned before, then we are able to come up with improvement projects together with the people in the organization, equal to 10% of the 2 million, that is 0.2 twice a year, then you have 0.4 million euro. Two circles per year. 0.4, thereby simple. The EBITDA is expected to be 1 million, as you can see. 0.6, 0.4 is 1 million. Then in a real world, you get normally disappointed. You only get 0.8. You promised that we should increase 0.4, but you only get 0.8. And the reason in this is that we are not alone. Also, your competitors, of course, doing improvements in their way, in their manner. And what we are doing when we're doing CBI, we're actually beating them and strive for beating them. So the 0.2 is their level of improvement. So we go for being better than them. So this is the business case, so to say, of what I explained before. And thereby, we are through in half an hour. What is innovation? What is CBI? And welcome again to Anders.
Yes.
Thanks.
And I'll sit down here.
Welcome to the two of you. It's great that you went through this in such a fast manner. I'm really excited about that. I think we already have a few questions coming up here, and I just want for all of you who are here, you can also ask on Facebook if you want. I'll keep a track of both places. But let's start with the first question. Cesare is asking, current company's competitive position in its industry shows if its budget on innovation is big enough, if 4% of it is enough or 10% is not enough. I mean innovation both in product and in process. Because the world is changing so fast, you cannot not innovate. I think it's more a comment, but I would like to hear your thoughts about how large can the budget be if, for innovation?
Yes, but I think I like the comment because it's right up my alley, so to speak. But I think it's important because your current organization is uniquely geared to get the results they get right now. So what's very important here is, and I think that's what I read out of this comment, is who do you compare yourself with? There are enough sad excuses saying, oh, it's just we're unlucky and so on and so forth. But just look at your industry standard and then say, are we below in performance, below the average or not? And if we're below the average, then stop making excuses and start innovating. That would be my comment to this comment. I can give you a quick example. Because I have too much money, I invest in hi-fi equipment, which is really silly. But one of the Danish chains, which actually have boutiques, and they're really old-fashioned. So they sell hi-fi in the old style way, which is very much before Corona. And it's old-fashioned. But what they do in this company is they compare themselves to those who sell online, because that's the kind of competition you want to compare yourself with. So you should also ask yourself, what's my industry? To whom do I compare myself? And that will help you to settle whether it's 4% or 10%. So yes. Exactly
as the example I gave. If the competitors, they improve 2% and you improve yourself 4%, then it's great. If you improve yourself 4% and your closest competitors improve in average 6 or 8%, then you have a problem. You have to find the 10% and the formula for that.
Yeah. Yes. Exactly. Marcel is asking, is the invention of money not the biggest cause of all the problems? Shouldn't we follow and record value flows instead of money? Follow contributions to a shared purpose.
Yeah, that's a really valid point. I have 2 comments, and I'm sure that Anders have more comments. Perhaps you should start, Anders.
It's a very provocative comment. Money certainly made life much easier, but I think what I digest from what you're provoking me with is no. The problem is that money has stopped having a real value, in the sense that if you buy a house, you no longer buy the value of the bricks and mortar of your house. No, you pay according to what the real estate agents and the bank thinks you can pay at the given point in time. So therefore, it's not really money. And if you ask my teenage daughter, she thinks money comes from something called mobile pay. That is from her father. She thinks money comes out of the wall. So what we have lost is, and that's what you're saying really, we've lost the sense of, we separated the sense of value from money. And when they came virtual, you can't even carry them around anymore. So you don't really know what things are worth. That would be my comment.
My comments is as follow. The first thing you have to think about when you do CBI and innovation, that is purpose. Money is only a tool that helping you to achieve your purpose. And therefore, for example, I like to put in CO2 and give them a label in terms of money. Because thereby you can compare and you can prioritize among all the enormous amount of things we are able to do and not to do. And if we think the price is not fair on CO2, then we should just erase that cost. So that's my first statement. And then again and again, we observe in the field of doing improvements in organizations, they are damn focused on cost and too little on value, on benefit it creates for the surroundings. So therefore, my recommendation is to strive for green money and red money, as I call it. Green money, that is effectiveness money, that is about succeeding the dreams of the customer and the stakeholders, as example-wise expressed in the purpose. And the red money, that is about getting less cost. So that's the best earning companies through history. They have just got both, and they really make things simple and smart. You know, Lego, you know, Apple, you know, Nokia, and this is all history. Ford, that is when you create something which are enormous value for your surroundings. So therefore, people are willing to pay, and on the other end, you can do it cheap and fast for the value of your operation.
Yes, and I'm just looking at the chat. There's a wonderful comment saying that both growth and sustainable development can be supported by the money system. I actually beg to differ in the sense that I don't separate between growth and sustainable development. In the slide presentations, I think Lars has promised you will send out. I have the image of a shark and it is fake news story, but it's a wonderful story that sharks never sleep, because if sharks stop moving, then they will die. So they have to keep moving. And I always say organizations are like sharks. That is, organizations must continually grow. But what we've learned from now the Greta Thunberg or whatever, the return of the sustainability movement, is that growth can also be sustainable. You don't need to grow in earnings alone. Necessarily have to have money, because you never have enough, as someone else says. But you have to earn something, but then you can say we want to grow by improving the environment, by improving performance in different ways, by improving the happiness of our customers or the happiness of our employees, As long as you think that in, then money is just a means to an end, as Niels says, purpose. So you need to find your purpose. And your purpose is not necessarily to have the optimal or maximum amount of money. At some point you have money enough. I mean, you can only change your underwear so many times during the week, if you ask me. So maybe you should then find another purpose, which is very important. That guides innovation. You don't innovate just like that because you want to. You do it because you have a purpose. And you do CBI with a purpose. And as Niels' wonderful illustration, when you have a purpose and clarity, you're happier. So that's what I think. What's money for?
Okay.
And the other comment I can see, and I actually agree, we create a lot of waste because we don't collaborate. But you can use the market, the capitalist system, by collaboration to reduce waste. For instance, one organization's waste is actually raw materials for another organization. You just need to connect them. A friend of mine has actually made an online thing on the internet where you can say, we have this waste product, who wants to take this off our hands so we don't have to throw it out? Maybe there can even be money involved. The market is a very, very mighty change mechanism. So if you think sustainability into the capitalist system, I actually think you can use capitalism, the market, as a way to save the world. I'm not a communist. The market is the mightiest change mechanism we have. So money was probably not such a bad invention after all.
Thank you for the great questions and comments from you, Michael Tesser. Mathieu
Tesser.
Sorry.
I have a question for you. It's probably for both of you, but Niels, when people are talking about continuous business improvement, a lot of people are thinking on being more lean, being more effective. It's more on the cost side, but I also know that it can also be used on the top line, on really improving the top line and the work with customers. And I think you have. Do you have some good examples of that? How organizations can work with that?
Yeah, we have worked several times for sales organizations, and actually we did a case together with Danfoss, actually for 2 years, and that was innovation. That was really innovation for us and for Danfoss. And that's illustrate what you are talking about. We simply took a team of Danfoss people to the customer side somewhere around in the world. And on that customer side, we got a team from the customer. And based on that, we saw how can we make win-win together. Because they are industrial customers for Danfoss. And they use the things from Danfoss to make their products attractive. And therefore, it was a win-win for them. They would love to, and they also started to buy more good stuff from Danfoss due to these sessions. So that's an example.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And one of the failures to move to another place and also take what you talk about, Lars. One thing which sometimes frustrates me and surprised me a bit, that is that CBI, Lean, Six Sigma, doesn't matter what you call it, is inside the factories. It should be in all parts of the organization. And sales teams, they are fantastic to do CBI together with, actually. And all part of the organization, they should think on two things. They should think on efficiency. That means how can we do with less resources in broad sense, but also effectiveness. How can we meet the customers better and thereby get growth? So that's very important too. Very good questions. Thank you, Lars.
I have actually a kind of sad example, but just very, very simply, I won't say the name of the company, but a Danish major financial institution use the principles of CBI to streamline their processes in IT, because there were lots of double processes of when you treated customer orders or whatever. So if we reduce those, we will spare a lot of employees. But we promise the employees that if they take part of this process, if they share the purpose, then we will re-employ said employees in sales, so you can increase your sales efforts. And they saved about 150 positions. Now, the sad case is those positions that were saved, those people were not re-employable in sales. But that's sad. But the resources don't have to go to the bottom line necessarily, saved by CBI. They could go to an increased sales effort or increased development effort or whatever. That a minute saved from doing boring stuff that you don't have to do or double work or whatever is a minute you can use on innovation, if you ask me.
Exactly. There is a question more from Cesare. He's saying, I don't know how far we can separate between CBI and innovation as functions in the organization. In my view, we should have both daily, but on the level of small teams and even individual employees. Otherwise, the company will be too slow to react for innovation opportunities, and employees will be less and less engaged. What is your view on this?
I totally agree. That there are two things to say about this, but the first thing is, like I said, I totally agree. Bob Cooper made a lot of research on ideas, innovative ideas getting to the marketplace. And as I recall, you have to have more than 1,000 ideas to have one that's a good idea, because most ideas are actually pretty bad. When I say that, then of course, the more people who get ideas, the merrier. So you should involve employees and not disengage them. And also the employees happen to be the ones closest to the actual problems. You're not necessarily that close to that as a CEO. Having said that, what Niels' experiences, and also mine actually, is that you have to train this, that you have to engage employees for several years before they actually get training in having good ideas. But I have a wonderful case from a Danish company where the lowliest, well, the most wonderful employee, by the way, but just an average Joe employee said, we have a distribution system. We distribute twice a day, 5 days a week. Why don't we stop distributing Friday afternoon? Because our customers actually, like all Danes, just want to have the weekend off. Out of 3,300 customers, there were 4 complaints, but they saved 250,000 euros. That went straight to the bottom line. And then they freed a lot of resources to do other stuff. So I totally agree. And you don't know if you, like I said earlier, you have an idea, let's scrap the Friday afternoon trip. It's no problem. It's just a matter of not going and then lay off some employees in this case. But it's a simple matter. It doesn't have to be large and complicated. So I think you should engage as many employees as possible. And then sometimes an idea, you can just do it. Just like that, you don't have to have 100 days to do it. You can do it in 100 minutes or 100 seconds. It's just a matter of doing it. Sometimes it's a bit more complicated. Then you have to do a sprint. And I'm a huge fan of Niels' sprints, 100 days, because you can really engage employees. And then sometimes it's very complicated. It's chaotic. You have to analyze stuff. You have to invent stuff. You have to have patents. And that you might call innovation. But the process inside the mind of whoever gets the idea is the same. Your mind doesn't know that it's innovative. It's just thinking. So get people to think, if you ask me.
I think
Exactly.
It was a great question of you, Cesare, and it was a great answer from you, Anders. I will only add a small thing, observed many times, and that is that as in life, we have to we just wake up in the morning as 2-year person, and then we run like hell. We have to come through a growth, and CBI deliver a great way to being ready to do great innovations. What I observe again and again, that is the overlap is enormous among CBI and innovation and operation. In the best companies, there is a flow among people between these 3 things, and they handle that in a organic way, so to say. It's I remember my youth in Grundfos. The 100 of people did a lot of CBI work. They called it something else on that time. Doesn't matter. But of course, sooner or later, you qualified yourself to the big innovations. So only to complement the good question and answer from you, Cesare and Anders.
But I have an illustration. Again from 1997, not Paul Gascoigne this time. When I lived in London, one day I was bored because as an academic we don't do actual work. So I went to the almost next door neighbor, which was the headquarters of something called Virgin, and asked for Richard Branson. As it was, he wasn't there. But they gave me the great tour because they thought, oh, a professor popping in, that's interesting. Branson has one job, and that is to get ideas. And then he has more than 100 people who qualify, analyze, and so on and so forth these ideas so they can make sure that the 999 ones that are bad get shifted out of the system, and they only move on in a very analytical way, not very creative. It's more CBI in order to make business plans and so on and so forth. So the Gaan model is, if you start with innovation, you start in chaos, and then you go around the model to reduce it into something that's operation, so you can make lots and lots of money, which we want. And the CBI way is you start in the complex, complicated, and then sometimes something comes out of that will create a little chaos and create an innovation. Then you can go back and forth. To me, it's just a matter of where you start. And it doesn't have to be the top man, the CEO, who gets all the ideas. Ideas can come from everywhere, from the smallest creature in the organization, so to speak, can get the great idea. And so we should not separate them. I totally agree. It's a wonderful comment or question.
Well, I have a question for the two of you. Since you are both practitioners, one in thoughts on innovation, the other one on continuous business improvement, I would like to ask you the question of Anders. How are you using continuous business improvement in your work with innovation? And Niels, how are you using innovation in your work with CBI? You know, are you innovative, Niels, and are you continuous improving, Anders?
I think I'll start again today. We practiced yesterday. Let's try and keep this professional, so to speak. I work with this in the way that I surround myself. I never work alone. I surround myself with people who like to finish off tasks, who like to document stuff, who like to do all the things that I find boring. Because I also found that such people are much better at that than I am. It would be a very stupid idea to have me do on whether a bridge will collapse or not, because I simply, that's not my core skills. So I think having the right team, and it's very important to respect that there are some people who are very good at what I'm not good at. And I always, for all the years I worked with this, as an academic and as a professional, as a board member or whatever, I surround myself with people who are not like me. There's a lot of conflict involved in that because it's easier to talk to people who have the same opinions as you, but it's much more fun. And I don't go to the workplace to have friends. Friends are outside of work. I go to my workplace to create results. And I found the best results is surrounding yourself by people who have other skills than you.
Great to hear. And I feel it because Anders and we are quite different in nature. And so I also actually has that experience together with you, Anders. So I can confirm your statement. From my side about doing innovation, then it's obviously needed to mention that this year have developed a lot for us. We have innovated a lot. The analyzing days, we have utilized it completely and also implemented that in some organizations, in some contexts. And we also have developed a system for managing our 100-day sprints projects. So this year in that system, we will we will operate more than 500 projects. And actually, that is not our projects. That is the employees' projects. And we have innovated that system to take exactly that perspective. So of course we can get some consolidated things, but it is built together with the customer for enabling them, each project leader, to manage this project very simple. So that's two things. A third thing we have done this year is to bring me in this uncomfortable situation called webinar. It's a little bit uncomfortable for me, and now it becomes easier and easier, and this is a third webinar. We would not have done this without the pandemic, I believe, actually, to be honest.
No. Necessity is the mother of innovation. Having said that, Lars, I find, Niels and I just talked about this because I got here early today, unplanned as usual. I actually, in my personal life and in my work, find I have a huge need for structure. If I write a book, I can't just sit down and write and then words flow. I have to have a structure of chapters. They may change on the way, but I actually spend a lot of working time not being creative, but just structuring stuff. But that's because I also work in a boxing club, where we work with people who have troubled childhoods and so on. So I know from a pedagogical point of view, if you have a structure, then you have something to deviate from. Or as the great Dalai Lama said, if you want to break the rules, it's a good idea to know what the rules are first. So I'm a great fan of structure and CBI and all that. I'm not very good at it, but that doesn't mean I don't accept it exists and it's a good thing.
Exactly. Well, some really, really interesting thoughts from the both of you. We are almost approaching 11 o'clock, and I just want to, before I give you just a final comment from each and every one of you, the both of you, I would just like to say that it's been a privilege learning about the innovation. It's been a fantastic journey. I know, Anders, you didn't tell us today, but you are actually you stopped working in Denmark. You're actually working in Brazil now, and Niels, you're also on a journey of a lot of different things. So I just hope that people will connect with you, people will engage with you. But Anders, can't you just tell us what are you doing and what are you going to do in Brazil?
Well, first of all, I might go to Brazil physically at some point, preferably at the end of February, so I can have a stopover in something called Rio. But it's online because the realization of what Niels also said of the COVID-19 crisis and that we had to rethink teaching and so on has made that I'm now a professor at something called St. Paul, which is a business school. They have 10,000 students physically, but they have 100,000 students online because they want to be the world's leading online learning machine, so to speak. They happen to have a collaboration partner called IBM that invests heavily in this. So again, the greatest ideas in the world doesn't have to come from Scandinavia, have to come from America. Right now, the greatest innovation in this in São Paulo. And I've had the freedom in my entire career that I always were where the most interesting stuff was. That happens to be Brazil. It's a tough job. Someone has to go. I will make the sacrifice, but most of it will be online. Also for you guys to consume in this manner. So
great. So final comment from the two of you, Niels. What do you see? Just a final comment on the topic today: innovation and CBI. Where do you see this going?
I believe it will be. It has been a steady challenge the last 1,000 years, and it will be the next 1,000 years.
Exactly.
To balance these two things. There are no right or simple answer on that. perhaps the only right, and if there are any one right and correct answer on that, is wherever you are, you have to find your your innovation partner, so to say. And also we should perhaps have the persons who do the daily work. So we have all these three roles in wherever you are, and have a continued dialogue, discussion, and of course decision and alignment and execution of these balances.
Exactly. Anders, a final comment on innovation and CBI?
Yeah, I do. First of all, just to illustrate this structure, I'm kind of OCD with a lot of things. One is numbers. Niels and I had a discussion on the phone. I think you were there as well, Lars. I think we had a Zoom. But in New Future Formulas life, the first 5 years, they worked with one company. Then the next
more or less.
But just forgive my OCD.
That's right.
The next 5 years, they worked with 5 companies. And then I had the creative leader mindset saying to Niels, the next 5 years, you should make the company 5 times bigger by use of IT technology, because it's already there. It might not come true, but it's a proactive statement that shows 5s and 5s. I love it.
Well, that's great.
To Anders, when he said that, we have already a schedule for that.
Exactly. That's absolutely true.
That's
That's absolutely true. So, ladies and gentlemen out there, thank you very much for joining the webinar. Follow the journey of New Future Formula growing 5 times over the next 5 years. Follow Anders on his journey to Brazil and teaching people all around the world the great stuff of innovation. It's been a wonderful journey today. Thank you very much. And I hope that you will have a great life in your life and in your businesses, working with innovation and CBI and balancing the two of them. I know that these two gentlemen are always open for a conversation. So connect with them on Facebook or on LinkedIn, send them an email or send them a text or just a call. We will send you the slides today so that you can see what it is. If you are on Facebook, just write it in the chat that you want them. Your email address will make sure that it gets to you. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you very much for today.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.